Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast presented by Twisted Tea and My Bookie. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter. And I'm joined as always by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Vols on Twitter. What's up, yo, Tennessee Homer?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh, doing great, buddy. We've got a loaded show here. Anwar Richardson,
Yes.
from Orangebloods, one of our favorites.
Hook 'em horns.
Texas and Oklahoma's are our cousins now, so we're welcoming them in. And Chris Marler, Saturday Down South. Saturday football, uncensored. Two great conversations with this marquee game. I think this is,
Two totally different people, too, Mike.
yeah, for sure. But I mean, hey, these games are getting, more and more important.
Yep.
The hype is real. And this is what I'm going to try to do all season long if we can. Wherever the big game is, try to get it covered from both sides. That's something we always try to do. We've done it in years past, but I'm committed to doing it again this year, even better. You know what?
Absolutely. We got a lot of great games this week, but that obviously is the one that everyone's talking about. I was curious. Because you kind of asked a question like this the other day, and I want to ask you, because I never got your side.
I try my questions out on you first.
No. Yeah, I know. And then all night I'm like, this son of a bitch got me, But I wanted to ask you, not coaches, not players, but fan bases. This Texas-Alabama game, who is it bigger for? Is it bigger for Texas? I guess you could lump in Oklahoma too, because again, both of these programs will be coming in next year, and this is kind of a telltale sign to how far along they are.
Yeah.
Or is it bigger for the Alabama fan base?
No, not even a question. Texas. It's bigger for
Yeah.
Texas. And they won't be ranked number one if they win, but they should.
Yeah.
Because the rankings, to my understanding, is for 2023.
Yeah.
And no one will have a better win than in Tuscaloosa if they were able to pull that off. Again, huge if.
Yeah.
But I respect Georgia. Put Georgia number two. Hell, Kirby would probably thank us for putting Georgia number two. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it won't happen, but that's what it should. And no, I think, they think under Sark, with all these weapons, they're legitimate.
Yeah.
They talk and talk and talk. And hell, we all do it. So I'm not just poking at them. But here's their opportunity to prove it. And to beat Bama. If they beat Bama, they're a front runner to make the playoff already.
Yeah.
Because there's no one in that league aside
Right.
from Oklahoma that can touch them, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I'm trying to figure out how this season's going to end. I think we all do that. We're looking ahead, especially like a team like LSU, got a loss, a black eye, but do they have an opportunity for college football playoffs? Well, you don't if a team like Texas goes undefeated. You don't if a team like Florida State goes undefeated. So you're looking at the Big 12, like you're going to need some you're going to need some miracles along the way. So it's kind of a telltale sign. And if Texas does come in here and stumble, then again, well, maybe we have an opportunity because you're looking, Florida State does play Clemson, so there's still a chance there. And Ohio State does play Michigan. So, you start marking off some of these teams that potentially could have a loss and then get you into the college football playoffs. So it's really early in the season.
Yep.
But this game has so much riding on it.
And before we get to our interview, Shane, you got two things. Mailbag. I enjoyed the mailbag so much last week, so I'm going to keep doing this as long as there's great questions. But also we got some injury updates, some critical injuries across the SEC. So let's get to that real quick, Shane. For the big game, Alabama, two defensive backs kind of banged up. Malachi Moore and Jalen Key, the transfer from UAB who had an interception in the opener.
Yeah.
These are critical guys. Nick Saban says they are practicing, but will they play? That's something that they can't comment on until we get to the game. And it doesn't matter who we speak to. They say Texas got an advantage with the receivers and tight ends over Bama's defensive backs. So if they're down Malachi Moore, if they're down Jalen Key, which at least they're practicing, so I'm not saying they're down them, but if those guys can't go, even if one of them can't go, that's a big blow to Bama.
Absolutely. The stars are starting to line up a little bit for an upset miracle here. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but again, it's at a position that when you look at the strengths of the Longhorn, it's the receiving core. It's what they've all been talking about all offseason. We didn't get to see a good dose of it, the first week, but maybe they were saving a lot of that for Bama this week.
Yeah. Now this one hurts, Shane, but thankfully it doesn't sound too serious. Rocket Sanders, knee swelling, and he may not play this weekend against Kent State. They may hold him back, and Sam Pittman, he's not giving a timeline or anything. Didn't even say he won't play, but he's not practicing. That's the rule down there. If you don't practice, you can't play. So I don't anticipate we'll see Rocket Sanders this weekend against Kent State. Again, remember, Kent State, 0 returning starters, lost by like 50 points in the opener. They don't need him. They got a talented backfield. But this is a situation to monitor because they sure as hell going to need Rocket come SEC play.
Yeah, or even BYU. He had a hell of a game against them last year. So, yes, may not need him against Kent. But if there's a chance that it could, he could really get hurt, then I'm going to pump the brakes. Let's shut it down. We don't need him week 2. But you would like to see him out there because something you and I talked about was the lack of rushing performance that we saw last week is something that we're going to try to hit hard this week, and now that kind of slows that plan down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this doesn't slow down the Vols' defense.
I know.
Keenan Peely, linebacker, out for an extended period of time, and Heupel says we don't think it's season ending, but anytime your coach is throwing that out there, it doesn't sound good at all. He was one of the players of the week against Virginia. This is the transfer from BYU. Thankfully, Tennessee is kind of, again, the same thing I've been saying, a lot deeper, a lot more talented. This could have killed you a year or two ago. It's not going to kill you, but losing a team captain like this, not great heading into SEC play in a couple weeks.
Not good, and we all do this. We mark, well, we'll be fine, and then one leads to 2 to 3. You're just hoping that this doesn't snowball and we have more injuries. But start of the season, this is the time where you're going to see some of those big injuries popping up. You just hate to see it's one of your programs.
Right. And then last one, Auburn, linebacker Austin Keys hurt his thumb. Free says he could be out a while. They're going on the road at Cal.
Cut it off, Mike. He don't need it. I mean, was he a linebacker?
Yeah, linebacker. But Auburn, again, they're not deep enough to where they can lose a ton of guys. You know what I mean?
In the 70s, they just lop that thing off, put them in cast on them.
All right, buddy, let's get to the mailbag questions. How's that sound?
Yeah, no, it sounds good.
And I know I saved this one.
I tried not to read them because I saw you put them on.
You said that last time, and then you're sending them to me in the middle of the night. So I was like, he's looking at some of these.
So I got tagged in a couple of them,
Okay,
so when I got the tag, I said, oh, shit, I sent the mailbag. So I did retweet it, but I didn't read a lot of them.
Okay, well, I want to start with that one first. I can find it first. Okay, this comes from Lucas.
Yeah.
What would it take for Cousin Shane to wear a Mizzou shirt for an episode of the pod?
Oh, man. I thought about this. This is the one I saw. So I did give this one some thought. And, my first response was 10 wins because that's what I'm hoping the best case scenario happens for Mizzou. But you can't get to 10 if you can't get past Kansas State.
Yeah.
So you're going to be an underdog. You guys beat Kansas State. I'll wear the Mizzou for sure, man.
Yeah.
And in fact, I went a step further. I went online and went shopping for this because, my fat ass is, I can't go to like regular stores like normal people, normies, I call them, so I may have the Walmart version of a Mizzou shirt, but I will have one when they beat Kansas State.
All right. I love that. All right, how about this one from Pete Limbo, stay-in account, Shane. Spencer Rattler came back to South Carolina to improve his draft stock. Do you think his performance against North Carolina, 9 sacks, did that help him? What do you think his stock looks like if the O-line doesn't improve over the season? Well, if the O-line doesn't improve, he may not be upright.
Yeah.
So let's hope that doesn't happen. But more specifically, in that game, I know people look at the loss and we always blame the quarterback. I think that helped him. Going 30 for 39, running for his life, getting sacked left and right. NFL loves to see a quarterback that's tough.
Yeah.
That can take a hit, that's going to stand in there and deliver.
Absolutely. You're drafting the player, not the stats.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, you could put Spencer on, Ohio State's team, and then all of a sudden, he's a Heisman candidate, possibly. That's the scenario that we have with him. And obviously, he ran for his life, but he was extremely efficient when given an opportunity, even though he had to make those opportunities. So, also development. We got to sit down with Spence, and I will say this: more of a grown up than Shane Beamer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're nothing against. I'm not bashing the fan base. That's not what I'm saying here. But we've all heard Beamer come out here and talk about the chain gang, eating hot dogs, and how great Furman's going to be. And yes, those are getting a lot of love online. But you're not hearing that from the quarterback. The true captain of this team. And that's what I like, is the respect. He's just going to go out there. He's going to do his job. He doesn't care who it is, and he's going to get the most of the receivers and running backs around him. So, but he's going to have some help, like you said, if he's going to stay healthy throughout the whole season.
Right. All right, how about this one from Davis Wade Stadium? That's a cool name.
Yeah.
Which team failed the SEC the most? He's talking about week 1, obviously. LSU or Florida? And for me, this one's easy because we are the most popular meme on Florida State Twitter right now. They're all over our YouTube. We do appreciate the, they're helping the algorithm. But I think it's got to be LSU.
Yeah.
Because I touted them up as a West champ, as a national champ. And by God, they looked I don't say awful, but it's like they quit and FSU outclassed them. FSU looks like the playoff, the championship contender, not LSU. Florida, I was trying to hype them up entering the season, but what do we say at media days? What do we say leading up to it? This is going to be a rebuild here. Yeah. And so Florida, remember, I'm Honda Morristown, that bad boy. That's when I don't have a great confidence in it. So LSU, I think, failed the SEC more week 1. How about you?
Yeah, I think you're right, and man, they have been all over our mentions, and I will say this: growing up, I did like Janikowski. I mean, that fat kicker. I figured when I wasn't going to be tall enough to play left guard for the Tennessee Vols, if I could learn how to kick the football, maybe there's a shot for me. But brother, when you're looking at these two games, everyone outside of us expected Florida to lose. There was a lot of people that expected LSU not just to win, but to destroy the Florida State Seminoles, and they didn't do that. So, yes, you want to talk about a black eye or just a hit on SEC pride, LSU Tigers.
Kind of a similar question here, Shane, from John. Which team from week 1 will turn it around quicker among the teams that struggled? So, again, I think he specifically, I would imagine, thinking LSU, Florida, South Carolina. Mm-hmm. You could throw in anyone else. I mean, not a ton of Mississippi State for maybe a half. But which team will turn it around quicker? I mean, I hate to kind of be repetitive here, but I think it is LSU. And a lot of that is because of who Florida plays and who South Carolina plays in the next month or so. I still think those teams can turn it around, but right out the gate, I don't know. Whereas LSU, they got some tough games coming up, but their toughest games are all in the second half, and we've seen them do it before. We got to get Perkins more involved. I mean, that in itself could turn this thing around for the Tigers.
I think it's going to come down to schedules too, though. So, do you have it pulled up, Florida? And nothing against South Carolina. I think they've got room for improvement, but they've also got Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi State coming. So it's if they can knock off one or two of those guys, they're right there in it, and then all of a sudden they're the most improved team in the SEC. But I'm kind of curious, Florida, LSU, next 3 games, who they got?
So Florida's got McNeese this week at home, Tennessee at home, Charlotte at home. So maybe you get on a little bit of a roll there. Looks like it would be an upset over Tennessee, but that certainly could happen.
But if you do it, I mean, 3-1 right out of the gate. Only lost to top 25 team. Got a top 10 win if you beat the Vols. So who's LSU have?
LSU. So they've got Grambling at home, at Mississippi State, and Arkansas at home. So that's definitely tougher.
At home, though. I think that helps. So I'm going to go with you. I think it's going to come down. When you talk about improvement, it's, you got to have the roster for it too. And
what about South Carolina though? Furman, number 6 in the FCS according to Beamer, at Georgia and Mississippi State at home. I mean, you can win 2 of those.
Yeah, I could get behind that. It's the Georgia one. Do I see a road where LSU wins the next 3 games? Yes. Do I see one where Florida can win the next 3 games? Yes. But do I think South Carolina can beat Georgia? In
Athens?
I ain't taking that bet. Right. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. But again, if you lose, how do you lose? Do you lose by a score and a half? Something like that. Do you keep this thing close? And then I hate moral victories, but you can have one with the Georgia Bulldogs, 2-time defending national champs. So, shit, man, maybe talk me into this. Maybe South Carolina, because they got a tougher road, they would be the one that would look back 3 games from now saying that they are much improved.
We are Luther Burton wants to know, can Tulane rejoin the SEC? That ain't up to us, but we would say no to that, don't you think?
Yeah, we've shot that one down.
Glock Vols, well, this is more of an off-season one, but can we get 5-minute history lesson on you and Shane's lives? I thought that was pretty good. Here's one that I really love. I'm going to wait for you to stop drinking because I don't want you to.
You don't want me to spit up.
Trey Tucker wants to know, does Cousin Shane offer turn-down service?
Oh, gosh. No, I don't.
How about...
but $100 is $100.
Eli Drainer wants to know, what will it take for Conner Weigman to get national recognition? It's going to be that Alabama game.
Yeah.
I mean, no disrespect to, Arkansas and Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's... Elijah, he's asking national. Yeah. Nationally, those teams, you go in there and whip them. People will start to notice, but the nation is not going to pay attention to anything A&M does until that game against Alabama in Kyle Field here in a couple weeks.
That's it, man. And unfortunately, that's where you're at right now. Now, once you get that national recognition, you may not need Alabama to kind of bolster your resume, but that's where we're at because we need an upset. Beating Miami is not going to be an upset to a lot of the SEC fans. There's going to be a lot of people not even watching that game, but they will be watching the Alabama game. I think they will be watching an LSU. I think they'll be watching a Tennessee Vol game. There's a couple of opportunities, but it all hinges on, the team that's had your number last couple of years. So you were close. And if you could come away and beat Alabama, Crimson Tide, then all of a sudden Connor's legit. He's a top shelf quarterback.
Now, how about this one? I thought this was kind of interesting. I'm curious to see where you go with this one. From JD, does the West run through Oxford if Ole Miss can beat Bama and beat LSU in back-to-back weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's one of the teams nobody's talking enough about because obviously it wasn't a fun game to watch. Hell, it was even tough to watch if you didn't have access to it,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Ole Miss is going to have some opportunity. If they keep playing like they did week 1, they can beat anybody. And I really do think that this Ole Miss team is a million times better than they were last year. So there's going to be some tough games, but Alabama, that's the toughest one because sometimes it feels like it's made to be bigger than it really is. And if Lane Kiffin walks away with a victory, that's all he wants, man. You ask him right now, what team do you want to beat? It's Nick Saban, Yeah. And he'll say all the good shit online about how he loves and respects him and, keep his dad's name out of your mouth, that sort of thing. But if you got truth serum and you ask Lane Kiffin, is there a team, would you sacrifice 11 losses to beat one team? Is there one? Yeah, absolutely. Nick Saban.
And here's why you're wrong, Shane. Because when I read that, at first, I was right there with you.
Yeah.
They beat Bama. They beat LSU, of course. The road goes through Oxford. And I'm not saying they wouldn't win it, because if you beat those two, particularly Alabama's in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
If you can win that game, there's no reason you can't win the West. But it doesn't run through for a couple reasons, Shane. And I'm all on board, brother. Them Texas A&M Aggies.
Yeah.
We can't overlook them.
Right.
I still think A&M can beat both those teams.
Yeah.
I think A&M can beat Ole Miss. So we got to factor that in.
Is it? It's at Oxford, though, right?
It is. It is.
So,
and
technically they got to run
Lane
through
Kiffin's undefeated against
Yeah.
Texas A&M, so we'll give you that. But here's another curveball.
Wait, is that true?
Yeah, Lane Kiffin's undefeated against A&M.
I thought they lost last year.
No, they whooped them. Lane Kiffin's undefeated against A&M.
I
But
believe you. I'm just fact checking.
here's a curveball though to the
Yeah.
whole thing. Ole Miss has to go to Georgia.
Oh shit.
So even if they
Yeah.
do beat Alabama and LSU, which is a big ask, at Georgia's going to be tough. That could throw a monkey wrench in the whole thing. And then cannot overlook rivalry game on the road, the Egg Bowl, Mississippi State. Again, I get it. If you're beating Alabama on the road, you're beating LSU, you got confidence you can beat Mississippi State. But that don't mean that you're going to do it. And the game's in Starkville. Home field is massive in the Egg Bowl. So, no, again, if Ole Miss does that, yes, I believe they can win it, but I don't think it runs through Oxford, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I forgot about the Georgia game, and you are correct, as usual. We can edit that part out, right? This ain't live.
All right, and then last one, Shade, from Joshua Askew here. That's kind of interesting. His name's Askew.
Which one's tougher? Ole Miss getting the win against Bama, or Ole Miss getting a win against Georgia? Because, again, it feels like that Alabama, Ole Miss rivalry carries a little bit more weight. And I'm not saying not to get your popcorn ready, but I'm just saying, it just feels like Saban has got that one a little bit more personal.
Yeah, that's true. I want to say Alabama is. Did you ask me which one's tougher?
Yeah, it'd be tougher for Ole Miss to win.
I almost want to say Alabama as I know that doesn't make sense, but Georgia, the Ole Miss game is right before Tennessee.
Yeah.
And if Tennessee's red hot, who knows? They might be looking ahead. They might look right through Ole Miss. So, yeah, I think I'll go with that Alabama one.
Georgia losing 2 games in a row. Could you imagine?
Joshua Askew, though, this is the final one here, Shane.
Yeah.
And who does Cousin Shane like in the Texas Alabama game and Texas A&M Miami games? I'll be sure to take the opposite.
Oh yeah,
But
I'm not going to give my picks away.
Right. I didn't want you to.
Tune in Thursday at 6, and you can find out how to make some money.
right. Well, I thought that would be the perfect segue, Shane, to let the audience know we're brought to you by MyBookie. Head on over to mybookie.ag today. Put in that promo code ThatSEC for all new signups, and they'll give you an instant 50% deposit match with that promo code, ThatSEC, over at mybookie.ag today. Shane, these people need to get on it, get on MyBookie, help the podcast. This is the number one way to help the podcast this football season. Fade our picks. That's as close
We're
as
literally paying them to help us out. Come on.
It's not going to get any easier than that. There's a link in the show notes. Head on over to mybookie.ag today. Promo code ThatSEC would really, really, really help us out. Shay, we're also brought to you by Game Time Sidekicks. How about it, buddy? You got another edition of my Game Time Sidekicks over here. We love our Game Time Sidekicks. GameTimeSidekicks.com. Promo code SEC at checkout, Shane, will get you 20% off your entire order, including these fantastic NIL cups. They've got every SEC team officially licensed gear here, stainless steel drinkware. You will not be disappointed with Game Time Sidekicks, I promise you. And then last but not least, Shane, Prize Picks back for another season. Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports. We love the Prize Picks, Shane. They got every sport covered at Prize Picks, but why we really love it, college football. It's the only one that I know of that's got daily fantasy college football selections. Same promo code SEC. They will give you 100% instant deposit bonus over at prizepicks.com. Once again, there's links to all of this in the show notes. All right, buddy. So you ready to kick it over to our interview with Anwar Richardson?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
All right, special guest on the show. We had to get our buddy Anwar Richardson over from Orangebloods on the show. I did his show this morning. Go check it out. The host of the old-fashioned sports show, part of the Orangebloods network. Anwar, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for coming on. First of all, you brought that fire on the show this morning. It was really great. I love all your opinions. I tell the same thing. I'll say it on your show. The same thing I said on my show. I don't really like a lot of people, but I love you. Like, and again, I don't like people. I'm just like, people just gotta, older I get, I'm getting older, so I'm a little bit more grouchier, a little grumpier, a little bit more set in my ways and stuff like that. But I love being on your show and being a part of it, and hopefully be a part of it as more and more as Texas is just moments away from being inside, as you would say, leaving that little bit of a conference. The Big 12 is kind of like if you have like a concert and it's an all-day concert, right? The Big 12 is kind of like that 6 o'clock show, maybe 5 o'clock show. The SEC is that show that comes on drunk at midnight. They're like, "Are you ready to rock?" Right? And the Big 12 is kind of like the right in between there. And so at some point, Texas will be at the headliners. They can show up at midnight and tell everybody, "Are you ready to rock?" and everyone starts screaming.
Yeah, and we can't wait. We've embraced Texas and Oklahoma already as SEC family members, but can you just give us a sense of your audience and how excited they are to leave the Big 12 and join the SEC, where we all know it's the greatest college football conference in the world?
Well, I think Brett Yormark made it pretty clear that he has no love for Texas. And what's an interesting part about when Yormark goes there before the Texas Tech fans and then kind of plays to the crowd as far as, I'm going to be in Austin, and he basically wants a repeat of what happened last year, which was Tech defeating Texas. The interesting part, one, it was unnecessary. You didn't need to say that. But what's fascinating in this hatred thing is people kind of forget that Oklahoma's leaving too. And it is like it's all directed towards one program. Like when you think about this whole thing, like Oklahoma doesn't have to talk about embrace the hate. They don't have that said because no one's hating on Oklahoma. There's one program that everyone's upset about. It's Alabama saying, you know what, Texas didn't give us the greatest treatment with ticket allotments and the band last year. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to put them all up in the upper decks. We're going to get our payback on them. And it's like, it's like, and I like petty, so I'm okay with the pettiness of it. Like I enjoy it. So I think it's kind of funny when it's all said and done, but it's all directed at the Texas thing. And so for I think Texas, when, like anything, it just kind of solidifies in their head they're making the right move. Like they don't have to look back and question, could we, should we? They look and say, no, this Texas carried that conference as long as it did. Sure, they didn't have the success from a football standpoint, just 2009, but brand recognition, that means something. And the brand recognition is what Texas was able to bring to them. That TV money is because of Texas, what Texas was able to do. And now Brett Yormark's done a great job. What's crazy is he's made no missteps since he's been there, Mike. He's done a fantastic job. He's the guy that got ahead of all the other conferences, and that's why the Pac-12 is pretty much dead, because he got that TV contract done very, very soon. But I think for Texas, I think they're ready to make that next step. They're ready to go turn the page, leave the Big 12 behind. I think the fan base is really excited. Look, at the end of the day, it's hard to get excited about games versus Kansas State, Texas Tech. It's hard to get up for those programs. Like it just is from a fan standpoint. The reason why Texas started scheduling tougher non-conference games is because the regular season schedule just wasn't as appealing as it once was. That's why Texas went after previously, before this, the LSU, scheduling Alabama. They scheduled Florida. They scheduled Ohio State. They scheduled Michigan. It was because their conference slate was just too boring. It was a hard sell. And the biggest game that Texas had of the year was Texas at Oklahoma, which was in Dallas at a neutral site. So it was hard to get that home schedule was tough. And so that's why Texas went outside and scheduled a lot of tougher opponents. They won't necessarily have to do that going forward once some of these contracts play out. But from a Texas perspective, this is a huge win to be with that conference that, solidifies this program for the next, 50 to 100 years easily.
And has it hit the Texas audience yet that last year's game, that was just a phenomenal scene. I anticipate something similar this Saturday when Texas comes to Tuscaloosa. But has it hit the Longhorns that, as much, fun as these games are, next year, I apologize, I'm not looking at the schedule, but every other year there's going to be one of these with Georgia, with LSU, with Tennessee, with Florida, A&M, on and on and on. I mean, do they realize the football excellence that's coming their way?
Yeah, I think so. And, I think, and I'm going to tell you this, Mike, from a Texas perspective, I don't necessarily think that kind of quote unquote worries them, because if you look at Texas, they've had some success against the SEC. So you look at last year and you look at what they was able to do to that Bama program. You hadn't really seen a Bama team that was really contained the way that Texas, especially that defense, was containing Bama at that point. Bryce Young, we know everything that Bryce Young is, and he was pretty much a human immortal for 3 quarters. There was nothing impressive about him until that fourth quarter hit. And of course, a Texas fan will say to themselves, the starting quarterback goes down after the first quarter of that game. Like what could have been from that perspective? Again, that Texas looks at that game and they say they lost Quinn Ewers, and then the backup comes in and he gets hurt as well, right? So they look at it like that. They look at it and think to themselves, there was a safety that should have been called that wasn't called, but Bryce Young's knee was down in that end zone. What could that have been? There was a field goal, 20-yard field goal, that was a chip shot that was somehow missed. They think of themselves like, what could have been if that had not occurred? Of course, the Bryce Young Houdini act, and they think to themselves they're one tackle away. In spite of all of that, they're still one tackle away. So they look at that and say to themselves, okay, they can hang with the SEC. We go back to 2019, LSU comes to Texas, and that is a back and forth battle that LSU pulls out at the very end, right? And Texas didn't know at that time, and none of us knew at the time, that would be one of the best programs and that would go on in college football history. But Texas battled toe-to-toe with a program like LSU without having every single guy on the team going into the NFL. Prior to that, the year before that, they played Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and they go in and beat them, right? And that's the famous Sam Ehlinger, we're back thing that, where Texas was never really back, right? But at the moment, Texas thought to themselves, they were back. The year before that, I'll go back to that, they played Mizzou in a bowl game, and they beat Missouri in that game. So if you just go through recent history, Texas has been very competitive against those programs. They've lost against the elite teams very closely. They've beaten the other teams. Now, the key and the secret sauce of everything is getting up for one game is one thing. And as you know, but being able to do it for an 8-game schedule, potential 9-game schedule in the future, that's going to be the tough part. That's the thing that they're going to have to get used to. But I think week 1 of college football, you and I talked about this, has shown you that there are SEC programs like a Florida that you can see them kind of get embarrassed. There was we saw the other programs in the conference suffer and sustain some losses as well. So you look at it saying to yourself, okay, Georgia's Georgia, and that's just a different realm. But you look at everybody else and you say to yourself, you know what? Texas should be able to be in the mix on day 1.
Now, how much pressure, if any, do you think is on Sarkisian going into this matchup? Because I've seen that narrative, and I really wanted to ask you are you completely sold that he's the guy that can take Texas where they want to go? Because again, I've seen that narrative. I don't know how much pressure's on him because it's in Tuscaloosa. It's mighty Alabama. I think all the pressure's on Alabama because I've been saying for 6 months it's a decaying dynasty, and they got to prove to me it's not. But where do you think, which side has more pressure, and are you convinced that Sark is the right guy?
necessarily think that there's a ton of pressure on Sarkisian at this moment in the game. I don't look at him at being in a hot seat of any portion or anything to that effect, because what helps is recruiting. And he's recruited his ass off. So when you bring in a guy like Quinn Ewers, you've got Malik Murphy as a backup quarterback, and no one seemingly knows that. And you bring in a guy like Arch Manning, you've got the recruiting thing behind you. So you're going to have the boosters behind you. You're going to have the fan base behind you. You're going to have all of that, right? So and he's recruited at a high level. They're doing well in NIL. And then they're able to bring in guys through the transfer portal. So I'm not necessarily convinced that this game, if they lose, ends up being anything to them. I think the season overall is more important for Sark going into the SEC, because the expectation is that Texas is supposed to win the Big 12. Like, that's the expectation. He's got to get to the Big 12 championship game. This is year 3. That portion is important. Sark has got to be able to, whether he likes it or not, there was a moniker on him when he was in Washington. The moniker was 7-win Sark. That's what they called him. And so he's got to be able to take this program up to the next level. He's got the talent. You got the quarterback that you want. You got the offensive line that you want. You got good running backs, and a 5-star running back who's a freshman in there. You got Xavier Worthy on the outside. He's a future NFL player. You got A.D. Mitchell, the Georgia transfer, on the other side. He's a future NFL player. You got Jatavian Sanders, who they consider to be maybe someone would consider the second best tight end in the country. But you've got him over there. Defensive standpoint, they've got guys. They got tons of guys. Jalen Ford, the linebacker, was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year entering this season. They've got guys on defensive line. They've got guys. Like, the talent's not the issue. There's no. You cannot question the talent. That's not going to be a problem here at all. But he's got to be able to now get this team to the Big 12 championship game, because Tom Herman, Mike, he got fired because he was good. But when you get hired at Texas, the expectation is great. That's what they want. They don't want good. Tom Herman had a winning record. He never lost a bowl game. Like, he was very good. They won their bowl game. The last one, they curb stomped Colorado, right? That's what they did, but that wasn't good enough. And so that's the thing for Sark is, all right, cool. Alabama, it is what it is. That you take that's a bonus, so on and so forth. But most Texas fans are hoping for that 10-2 mark. And so that becomes a thing. So when you add to the bigger question of Sark the guy, so on and so forth, this is his year to prove it. Like, this is his year to show, okay, I've built my program, I've built the roster, I've got the dudes. Now this is the next level of what it is. And we have to see. There's going to be a wait and see. I think entering this game, I don't have the stat in front of me right now. I had it when I was talking to you, but there was the stat, like, I think the Sark is, here we go. At Texas, against top 25 teams, he's 2-7 right now. So at Texas, trailing after Texas has been trailing after the third quarter, they're 0-6. Okay, trailing at halftime, they're 2-5. Trailing after the third quarter, they're 0-6. These are the things that we talk about. Like, okay, these are things have to change this season. First season, you get a mulligan. This last season, you can say you're building towards something. But this has to be kind of the year of breakthrough, because as you say, when you go into the mighty SEC, the one thing Texas can't afford to be in the SEC, you don't want to be middle of the road. You don't want to just go in and just be A&M for for a decade or more, right? It has not to take a shot at A&M, because they had success in year 1, and then and when it's all said and done, like, they're just middle of the road. And you don't want to be that. You want to be something a little bit higher than that and a little bit greater than that. And so that in order to be that guy that you don't have to look over your shoulder or anything to that effect. Yeah, this year becomes a bigger year than this individual game.
Just based, you're as well connected as anybody to that Texas program, but just based on what you're hearing, are they stepping onto that field in Bryant-Denny on Saturday with the belief that they can win that football game?
Absolutely. But the reason that they believe it is because that defense is good. They believe it because that defense travels. So they know that from a defensive standpoint, again, that's a defense that's toe-to-toe with a Bama team that I don't think most of us expected that they would be able to do last season. And so will they be able to get up for that? Like, absolutely. They've got a defense that, I know it was just Rice, but for the most part, Rice had, I think, 11 drives. Texas held them to 114 yards on those first 10 drives. They get 62 yards on the final drive of the game. So that happened. So they know from a defensive standpoint, they can go. They know that they can create some turnovers. They feel like they can have some effect on Jalen Milroe. Like, Jalen's a guy that they know if they get to him, he can turn the ball over. Like, they know that's there. They know that opportunity is going to be there. And they'll be in attack mode as relates to that. So, and because Sark used to coach there, because Jeff Banks used to coach there, because Kyle Flood used to coach there, because they have that familiarity, they can tell those guys, I recruited this guy, you can hang with that guy, you can hang with that guy. They're not going to go in this with any kind of awe whatsoever. They're going to go in there with the belief that they could come out with a victory, and I think they have a shot. It's not, again, it's an outside shot, right? Because Alabama don't lose at home, right? That's just a thing, and Texas is going to have to reach another level that we maybe haven't seen. Because the thing, as I've talked about, is a lot of it is close losses. That's fine. You got to get the close wins that are there. You got to make sure your quarterback survives 4 quarters against Alabama. Like the last 2 times they played them, that hasn't happened. Colton McCoy, Quinn Ewers, like, you've got to make sure like your quarterback stands upright. But they have the belief, Mike, that they've got a shot. They've got the belief that they can make that thing happen. But mainly it's because that defense will travel, and they feel like that defense will be able to keep them in some ball games.
And I'm not going to put this out till Thursday. I don't want to ruin. Have you made your prediction yet? Do you have who do you think will win this game?
I have not made a score prediction, but I am going to. I'm going to predict Bama to win that game. I'm probably going to be somewhere in like a 24 to 17-ish kind of range. I'm not expecting anything like that. Now, if that's the case, just go ahead and bet against me and then bet the over, and you'll probably be okay, right? But I'm not expecting an offensive fireworks. I'm not expecting that kind of thing. That's not really Alabama's MO. That doesn't seem to be the thing that they get into. But I think they'll have to keep the score low. I think it'll be a challenge a little bit for Texas, against that defense to, move the ball and on the road. I know you and I talked about it. I know that Tuscaloosa at that stadium isn't always rocking, but I get the feeling they'll be up for this game. I get the feeling that they'll be moving a little bit, and I think that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. So I can see scenarios where Texas can pull out some victories, but in order for that to happen, again, I'm a little worried what I saw from that offensive line, specifically the interior against Rice. I'm okay, and I understand when people will say, like, well, Texas is holding back, and they're holding back some of their plays and this and that, and that's fine. But you're not holding back on execution. Like that, you're not holding back on that. You're holding back on plays, but you still got to execute the plays that you're running. So that one concerns me, just a little bit, where Texas is as far as connecting on the deep ball. Last season, Texas was the only team in the Big 12 that didn't have a pass for 50 yards or more. And so this year, in the season opener, against Rice, they didn't have that as well. So I'm still a little concerned at what's going on with this deep ball with the quarterback and the receivers, and what, they keep talking about how they're going to get on the same page. Are they going to get on the same page? Like, what does that look like? And so because of all those things, I say to myself, let me be cautious on this one and go with an Alabama victory. But if the scenario worked, if Texas does win, it will be because Quinn Ewers played at an extremely high level. It would be because Xavier Worthy had, a really, very good kind of monsterish kind of game that he's capable of, by the way. But it would have to be something like that for me to do it. But for right now, I'm going to predict a close Alabama win in a low scoring game. So probably somewhere in like 24-ish to 17, 24 to 20-ish kind of range, kind of coming down to the fourth quarter.
All right, last thing for you, Anwar. I got to ask you about A&M real quick.
Oh.
The game.
You just want me to get trolled all afternoon, is what you're saying. You just want my mentions to just line up like a Christmas tree. I can't
exactly.
wait. But
exactly.
Okay, I can't wait. Me and Billy Lucci are friends. So I can't wait But Billy likes to be a little sarcastic. So let me go ahead. Give it to me.
When should that game be played? Should it, do you want it back on, what is it, Thanksgiving, right before then? And thoughts on it being the return game being at Kyle Field, even though that's the last time those two met was also at Kyle Field.
Well, the thing about A&M is that, they bitch all the time. And the bitch fest would have been horrible if the first game would have been in Austin, right? The hissy fits that would have been thrown. This is the same school that somehow leaked out the possibility of Texas coming to the SEC with the hopes that would torpedo the whole thing from happening. And so, but they couldn't stop that momentum, and so they eventually upset about it. Eventually, they have to accept it. And that's the thing they were able to hang over Texas's head for all these years was like, we're in the SEC and you're not. We're in the SEC, you're not. Like, they're winning, we're winning. It's like their championships are our championships. So you're like hanging a banner for the Georgia's championship or something like that. But no, it has to be there in Kyle Field for the first one. And it's got to be an annual thing. Like, it's just don't get cute. Like, don't get cute. I get it where we say there's Southern Conference as things start to go. Like, we won't see Bedlam anymore, right? We won't see Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State because of Oklahoma leaving the conference. But the college football needs rivalries, man. Like, that's what makes this thing so amazing. Like, that we remember these rivalry games. We grow up with them. Like, it means so much. It don't rob the fans. And that's the thing I feel like with Sankey. I don't think he wants to rob the fans of that. And he understands, like, especially from a TV standpoint, why the hell would you as a TV person have Texas come in your conference and say, we won't have Texas play Texas A&M on Thanksgiving Day and have all the ratings that would come along with that? Well, why? Mm-hmm. It makes no sense. Like, what makes sense is to say that's going to be a money game on Thanksgiving Day where, there's not a ton, it's an NFL day. But, hell, once you get past, the Lions, which is optional, and then once you get past the Cowboys, when you get to your evening game, like, you can put that thing on there in the evening time, and that will be something that college football fans would love to watch. So to me, it's got to be an annual thing after the 2024 season. I think TV has got to demand it. It's got to make it happen. It makes too much sense not to happen. It just makes too much sense not to have Texas play Arkansas and A&M, every single year in the rivalries that they wanted. And I get it. I get why, Mike, they wanted to push this thing off. There's a 12-team playoff, and they want to see how many teams they can get in, and they don't want to kind of cannibalize themselves. The SEC, everybody's just beating up on everybody, and then you got other programs are getting in the playoffs and with 10-2 with easy schedules. So they want to see how that the scheduling factors into the decision making as far as who makes the playoffs. But at the end of the day, give the people what they want, give them the rivalries that they want. And I'm hoping that when it's all said and done, I'm hoping it's an annual thing because it's too good of a game and it means too much to college football not to do it.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Anwar. Can you tell us, the audience, how can they find you, social media and the show and everything? You put on a great product. I truly am a big fan.
Thank you. So, for those of you, look, Texas is coming, so if you need some Texas stuff, I got your information here. You can follow me real simple, first and last name on Twitter. I made it real easy for you. It's Anwar Richardson, Anwar Richardson. That's why I'm on Twitter. I do a show every Monday through Friday, 8 to 11 by myself. It's called the Old Fashioned Sports Show, and I got a little bourbon glass there for the old fashioned fans there. But it's also kind of a throwback of some good old fashioned fun that I try to do that on OB Live is our channel. It used to be the Texas Longhorn football thing. We rebranded it. We do shows starting at 6:30 in the morning. All the way up until about 10 o'clock at night. So, but we mix in guests. Mike was a guest. I've had other guys on there as well. So that's the way you can follow me. But you can follow me on Twitter. There's some people who live on Twitter, Mike, that they're like 20 tweets a day. I'm not a 20 tweet a day guy. I don't got that much to say where I feel like you have to hear my thoughts on everything. Like I'm not, but I like to read it. So, but you follow me on Twitter, Anwar Richardson, as well. And I always love. Last thing before I go, I love this show. I love what you guys do. You guys are really truly professional in the things that you do. I know sometimes people give you a hard time, but for what you guys have been able to build up, maintain, and continue to grow and take it to the next level, like I really, hats off to, you, everybody that you work with. I really like of podcasts and things that I like to watch, people I like to follow, like you're amongst the favorites. So I just want to tell you guys, continue to do the great job that you're doing because it's excellent. Even the dog agrees. Even the dog, he's like, yo, yes.
All right, hey, how about it, Shade? So I'm not surprised, but the Texas guy picking Bama, again, not very surprised, but what was your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, fantastic interview. I always love hanging out with Anwar. He's like a celebrity at these SEC media days, Always got ladies swarming around him and stuff. I will say, brother, Texas is hungry.
Yeah.
They know the SEC's coming, and they've heard from all the 14 fan bases that are currently here that they don't belong, that they won't fit in, that they're going to have to rebuild to be top shelf caliber. Mm-hmm. But you put all that to bed when you come down to Tuscaloosa and get a win. Yep. They almost had one last year, and Anwar made some really great points there. It was almost a miracle that they didn't win that one. Mm-hmm. So did they use up all their good luck last season? I don't know. But I will say that this game it's a launching pad for both of those programs. We now will have a true kind of where are we? Where is Alabama? Is Alabama really on a revenge tour, or is Texas ready to come in here and steal the spotlight in the SEC next year? So, really good stuff here, man.
Yeah, and then for the opposing point of view, Chris Marler, Saturday Down South. Mm-hmm. Let's kick it over to this one. All right, hey, we're pleased once again to be joined by my man Chris Marler over there, Saturday Down South, College Football Uncensored, which is sometimes censored when I'm on it. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. We just rebranded it. It's actually called the Saturday Football Uncensored podcast now.
Shit.
Yeah, thanks a lot, dude.
You can, yeah, well, yeah. All right, I'll edit that out. Not really. Okay. But how you doing, buddy? Are you? Looks like you're in your shirt because are you going to a funeral on Saturday?
First off, don't use Scott Cochran's former trash talk against us. That was a fantastic quote in the 2008 Blackout game. I am wearing my shirt mainly because I'm out of shape and I don't want you to see my tits right now. So
perfect.
I'm excited, man. It should be a fun weekend. It'll be a really Tuscaloosa should be a lot of fun this weekend. I think outside of Brandon Walker being there, I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. And I can't wait, man. I can't wait.
And haven't you famously said that Texas is going to beat Alabama? Now, again, you said that I think a long time ago, and we've actually got a game now to study from each team. Have you walked that back at all?
So I was pretty adamant last year going into the game in the summer that this was going to be a one-score game, and the two predictions I made were that it was going to be a one-score game, and that no matter what happened, Bama was not going to get credit for it. Like if they beat them by 20, they're supposed to beat them by 20. If they beat them by less than 7, they beat a crappy Texas team. And all of that kind of seemed to play out. I think Texas is probably better than people gave them credit for at times last year. They obviously fell apart late, but they played Bama very well. And it's not easy to go on the road, to the state of Texas. Don't ask Georgia, but it's not easy to go on the road. So I think looking at this game coming to Tuscaloosa, going into the season, I thought not only Texas would win, I said repeatedly they were going to win by 10 plus points because I know that you're not as big of a believer in this guy as I am. It's like our main fighting point is that Steve Sarkisian. I think Sark is the best play caller in college football when he has dudes, and I think at Texas, when you look at this from some of a roster standpoint, when he took over, we always talk about how great Texas recruiting is and how there's no reason for them to ever slip up and blah 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 because they have the most like fertile recruiting ground in the country, but that's a roster that had 18 receivers and only 8 offensive linemen when he took it over. And now he's coming in year 3. He's got like one of the highest rated quarterback recruits in the history of college foot or of high school football coming in with Quinn Ewers. He's in year 2 of the system. He's got dudes everywhere at the skill position. They returned 10 starters. They returned all 5 offensive linemen. The only person they lost was, Bijan Robinson at running back, which is a pretty replaceable position at most places. And they recruited at a high level there, getting the number 2 overall back in the country. They just have dudes. And I think that when he's on script, like we saw last year in the first drive of the game, he's very tough to defend. And I just think that this is one of those games where it's like when Saban has played, offenses with a good offensive game plan and play caller. You saw it last year with your guys in Knoxville, Tennessee. Tennessee's up 21-7 at the end of the first quarter, right? Like they went right down the field and scored first. Texas did the same thing last year. We've seen him. Kiffin has been notably good at it, except for that 2021 game where he went for it on fourth down so much. I just think that this is a game where you end up in the first quarter down 14-3, and I don't know if Bama's offense is able to climb out of that and hang with them for 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'd put Sark about the 9th best coordinator in the Big 12. But let me ask you this. How much of a buzzsaw are they walking into there? Because the Big 12, there's just no place like Bryant-Denny. There's not right. I don't know. There's Texas and Oklahoma, and that's about it in terms of home field advantage. How big of an advantage do you think that'll be for Alabama? Because I don't think any of these Texas players have played in anything quite like this.
So I think Bryant-Denny as an atmosphere can be overrated at times. I don't think that this is one of those situations. I swear to God, if you clip that and only that, I will fight you in public next time I see you. No, I don't think this is gonna be one of those situations. This very much has the feel of like a 2019 LSU game, and some of those bigger games where like the moment I think fans understand this is not I think a lot of Bama fans are confident they're going to win, especially after the week 1 game and how they looked against MTSU. But I don't think they're going into it with the same kind of lazy, entitled attitude of we're obviously going to win. It's only a question about how much we win by. And I'll sit on my hands for most of the first, second, third quarter and complain about the coordinators until we pull away. Like that's because that's how I think Bama fans are for the most part. But I think that this is a different situation where it's like there's a lot at stake. And I think the Bama fans are pissed, just like Saban and the team are from the way last year ended and all the offseason talk from I love you to death, but people like you. And I think that people are fired up, man. It is if they lose, they still have the national championship like in play. But if they win, man, that you've got a lot in front of you and a lot more confidence as you pick up steam going into SEC play.
Mm-hmm. Do you have confidence in Jalen Milroe to win this football game if it's a high-scoring game, or do you think it needs to be a little bit defensive dominated for Alabama to come out ahead?
I would, between those two options, I would say anything but special teams for one. Just always with Bama, like I never want it to be special teams. I do think that you want to have like the defense. Like, this can't be like it can't be like Tennessee last year. You can't be giving up 50 plus points. It can't be like that Arkansas game in 2021 where it's like 42-35. You can't have a shootout with these people because Texas has got a lot of weapons and they've got a play caller that is better at like really taking like making you cover the entire field and taking the top off of defense better than Tommy Rees is probably able to do and his style of offense too. So to answer the question, every time I do anything cultural related, Georgia fans have to figure out a way to come in here and ruin it. And I know that's Athens Steve. No. So I mean, no, I think that like to the most long-winded answer ever with Jalen Milroe, I don't expect him to have a game like he did last week, right? At the same time, I trust him to go win you a game because he is a guy that you have to commit another person to him, maybe two, because of how good of an athlete he is. But if it's a fourth quarter drive and Bama's down, like I tell you what, if they're in the situation they were in last year with Bryce Young, no, I don't know if I think Jalen Milroe is able to win that game. But we haven't seen enough out of him that I would doubt him because I think it's a really, really good football player that people just kind of assumed that the whole thing was going to fall off a cliff, and I don't think that's the case.
What will those genius talking heads that you were alluding to earlier, what will they be saying on Sunday if Texas wins this game? Will it be the decaying dynasty is real, or is it that Texas has arrived? Where do you land on that?
I mean, I know that's what you're going to say, regardless.
I got the tweet ready.
You also said LSU was going to win the national championship, and they got just their brains beaten.
Yeah, I was going to get to that in a minute, but
so was I. So, no, I think, I think that people are. I said this in the offseason. I don't think the dynasty is necessarily dead. I don't know if Saban wins another national championship. I think he still competes for championships for sure. I think what's happening in Athens over there with Kirby, he's doing everything at a more elite level than anyone in the country. So I don't know if Bama wins another national title under Saban. I think that they will compete for them still, and I wouldn't say that the dynasty is necessarily dead, but I also think that like the amount of wish, for lack of better words, from people around the country that this thing is over and wanting to believe in it, and you know how the beginning of seasons are anyway, and just the nature of fans. Everyone wants to have their confirmation bias. Everyone's been saying stuff all talking season, and you want to be right? And fans when they're wrong. So it's like I think that when they've been saying this over and over to themselves that this is over, like that everything looks different. If they win, it'll be a much different attitude. But if they lose, it'll be much more the same. And even if the reasons are valid, it'll be much more the same of, yeah, exactly, dynasty's dead. Because I tell you one thing we don't do, we're just not going to do. And you saw a lot with LSU fans at LSU, FSU. We're not going to give credit to the other team. It's only going to be an in-house problem, right? Like you can't just sit and say like, oh, hey, like I remember watching that last year with like Tennessee fans being like, Will Anderson didn't have a single sack. And I was like, he didn't. He also went up against a first-round left tackle, which is a testament to that kid. It's like we could also just give credit to other teams and other players because there's a lot of good players in this league and a lot of good teams as well.
Yeah. So I'm not putting this out till Thursday, so I don't want to ruin any predictions you may have between now and then. But have you made a prediction? Who wins this game, Alabama or Texas?
I think Texas wins this game. I think I do. And the reason why is I think that this is a game where Sark is dangerous, and they probably should have won that game last year if Ewers is healthy for the entire time. Contrary to what some people believe, injuries do matter in sports, and they can affect the outcome of big games. I think that Bama loses that game maybe handily last year, even with how good the backup quarterback played, Hudson Card. I fully expect this to be a situation where if you're betting on it, Texas to score first feels like free money. Like I don't think this is a game where it's like nothing similar to any LSU Bama game except for 2019 where it's like it's going to be a defensive struggle. Texas will take the field. They will take the ball first. They will go down the field and score. They will have all sorts of exotic motion and plays and cross, just disguise stuff because Sark is so creative, especially when he has dudes, and he has dudes. So I think you start out in the game where the best way I would describe it is maybe like that 2012 A&M game where it's like maybe make a couple of self-inflicted wounds early, but it's also like I think that the other team, Texas in this case, gets out to an early lead, and you might see Bama claw back, but I don't think that they are built as of right now to hang with a team like this with this offense this early in the season. Later in the year when they know more what they have with Jalen Milroe and he's not making his third career start, maybe. But I think as of right now, it's hard not to look at Texas and be like, that team has it.
All right, let me get you out of here on this, Chris. Takeaways from week one SEC. Is it that LSU shit the bed and maybe look like the damn fool I am? Is it Tennessee, looking average but still beating a team by 40 points because they're elite? Is it Texas A&M maybe looking like a true contender, albeit against weak competition? South Carolina, Florida. What's your main takeaways there?
So I have a bunch, and I know that's not going to surprise you because I love talking, and I've already talked for way too long on this interview, I'm sure. But so just going through it, South Carolina's offensive line right off the bat, embarrassingly they had 17 total sacks on a 14-game season last year. They had 9 in week one. That's inexcusable.
Hot dog chain gang.
Hot dog thing. It's just like even The only person that's an athlete that could blame hot dogs on a losing effort is Joey Chestnut. And even Joey Chestnut on July 4th is like, it's going to rain. We're still doing this GD competition. So Shane Beamer, shame on you. No, but like, that's like one thing I remember pointing out when Spencer Rattler came from OU was when he was at OU, they had 11 offensive linemen that were 4-star recruits or better. And when he got to South Carolina, they had one. They have, I think, 3 or 2 now total on that offensive line. So that a lot of improvement there. You brought up A&M. A&M played against weaker competition, but we saw A&M play against weaker competition last year and still struggle. Like 17-0 at the half against Sam Houston State. It's an offense that averaged 23 points per game, and you come out and put up 35 in the first half. I think that's huge. I think that A&M is a legit contender, not for second in the West. I think they're a legit contender in the conference. That D-line is built like an NFL D-line, right? I think they're really good. The last two I'll get to that I was most impressed with besides A&M, Tennessee, and it has nothing to do with what we talked about with Tennessee all offseason because all the talk was about the offense, right? That's what we talked about Joe Milton, how far he can throw it. I'll be very excited when that question finally is put out to pasture because I'm tired of hearing it. We get it. It's 90. The answer is 90. We got it. But like that defense, that front seven and those guys off the edge, dominant, absolutely dominant. They were dominant against the run. They were constantly putting that quarterback under duress. I was very impressed with that. I was a little bit angry with whichever receiver dropped that walk-in touchdown because it cost me the first quarter over and the first quarter money line or first quarter spread. But and then last but not least, the LSU thing. I think LSU is still a really good team. But one of the things I heard all offseason is they were a championship contending team. And I think first, what I'll say is what I was saying earlier. It's like you got to give credit to FSU. FSU is a very good football team. We try to lump them in with like, Notre Dame or Texas or whatever, where it's like we've heard at times they might be back and then they're not. And it's funny because we like to kind of shit on them because, we watched them dominate Wake Forest for an entire decade and pretend that was a good schedule in the 90s. But like, I think that Florida State is a very, very talented team. And that schedule is not hard enough for them not to go undefeated or at least 11-1 where they could make the playoff. I think that you got to give them a lot of credit. But on the other end, if you're LSU, I heard all offseason that this was a championship caliber team. And all the excuses I've heard since, which was, well, we had a bunch of drop passes or Jaden Daniels didn't throw the deep ball well enough or there were penalties that should have been called. The penalty thing, if you're complaining about that, you're an idiot because they had 0 penalties in the first half. 0. And only Florida State was called. They only had drops the entire game. I don't care if they came in big moments. That's not what championship teams do. You got bullied on the offensive line all day. And then you apparently had an offensive lineman congratulating the defensive line in the middle of the game and saying, like, oh, you guys are good. Like, buddy, do that for the end of the fucking game. Like, what are we doing? Like I never stood in a batter's box in college and like looked and be like, hey, that was a really good slider, dude. Please don't throw it again. Like, that's a bizarre move. But yeah, I think that LSU has a lot of work to do, but they started out the season with a loss last year, albeit not like this. But I still stand by what I said. I don't think they're a championship team, and I think you saw why on Sunday.
Well, they're undefeated in SEC play. Got to remember that. But, all right, I appreciate you, buddy. Before you go, tell everybody where can they find you on social media and give them the correct name of your show this time.
I will. So Saturday Football Uncensored is the podcast, and we're out on all platforms. We come out on Thursday morning, and then we have a live show on Sunday night. It's a lot of fun. We also have a call-in, like a game day hotline number we post on social media. This week we had a Florida fan compare how bad this team was to how bad Star Wars has become, which was so it was a lot of fun. So check out the podcast for sure after you listen to this one, and then maybe go check us out. And then on social media, I'm Vern Funquist on Twitter. It's like I always say, it's very fun in moderation, but tread lightly.
All right, buddy. This is what I love. And we didn't set this up. But we got the Texas guy saying Bama's going to win. We got the Bama guy saying Texas going to win. Yeah. That's got me. I was already fired up for this football game, but I just love going into these big games, and we got opposing people saying, who will win the game. That just adds more fuel to the fire for me.
Well, it makes it a little tougher to make my pick Thursday, because I try to figure out which one I want to lock down, and I can't have them both going against each other because now it's like a coin toss. But that's exactly what we want to see, Mike. Week 1, there was a lot of games that weren't coin toss. The best game unfortunately, the SEC didn't win, in my opinion. I thought that LSU matchup was freaking awesome, and it was back and forth. It was why we love college football. But that's what we may see this Saturday between these two programs. So a lot of great games, but this one here I really got my eye on.
No, Shane, let's hope and pray.
Is this CBS?
No, ESPN night game.
Thank God. We got another. When's he show back up?
Next week.
All right. His
South
revenge
Carolina
tour.
at Georgia.
All right. Gary's revenge tour starts next week.
Shane, I didn't even want to put this into the atmosphere, put it out in the ether. But just bear with me. We'll close on this. And feel free to just shut this down if you think it's just stupid.
It already feels stupid.
What if Texas wins?
Yeah.
What if Miami beats A&M? What if Mississippi State loses? So these big non-conference games. If the SEC loses the majority of them this weekend like they did the first weekend, is it time to panic that the SEC's overrated?
Mike, SEC.
I mean, we got to ask the tough questions.
We do got to ask the tough questions, but the SEC is not overrated. But if your scenario happens, then yeah, it is. And I don't think it is, brother, because I know you were really high on LSU. There's a lot of people high on LSU. I had a little bit more reserve with the Tigers. I thought, this was going to be a slow go at the end of the season. Maybe they ramp up and become a high caliber team again. But my anticipation for them was not winning the West, was not going to an SEC championship. What I asked myself, Mike, was if I switched LSU with Georgia, would that have been a ball game? And can you sit right there right now and say that Georgia wouldn't have beat Florida State?
No, I mean, Georgia definitely would have won.
I think they would have destroyed them. I think they would have at least won by 3 touchdowns. That's where I'm at. Seminoles, you still hanging on? You still hanging on?
That's because of Shane this time, not me.
And the only reason I'm saying that is because I can't prove it just right now. So there'll be an opportunity. But that's how I was judging that game. Same thing with Florida. If Tennessee went up to Utah, do you think Tennessee would have beat Utah? Absolutely. I think it would have happened. So the first reaction, these are blue blood programs, LSU and Florida getting embarrassed. I think that's the mentality that this country has when they're watching these two programs, because maybe they don't watch LSU. Maybe they don't watch Florida. They haven't seen them in the last couple of years because they haven't really been relevant, but they think of the Tim Tebow games. They think of the Joe Burrow games and stuff like that. So I think there's a little bit of a natural, panic when you see those losses, but I don't think those two teams are the top of the SEC. So to say that we're, overrated, I'm not going to say that. But I will say this. If Texas A&M loses to Miami, if Mississippi State loses this week, who's the other one?
Tulane. What if Tulane beats Ole Miss?
Tulane, that's another. Oh, well, yeah. Any of them. I would say if 3 of them lose, Alabama and Ole Miss and somebody else, I could articulate that we're in trouble, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
I really don't. Damn, now you got me worried, dude. Now you got me worried. Like, golly, Seminoles can't
the point is, SEC's got a lot on the line this weekend. They better
got to
show
get the
up.
respect back. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, going out on a downer here, Shane. I appreciate you for joining me. Appreciate all the
spell respect without the SEC. Remember that.
Appreciate all the cousins out there. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right, see you guys. Go Vols.
I don't know why, but I like